You are what you eat. So the organization that is in charge of food safety, and it's all about food safety, health, because we already did a little bit of nutrition early in this semester. So the agency in charge of making sure your food is safe is the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and that's anything that goes into your body. So not just what you eat and drink, but also the electric radio waves that pass through your body, other electronics that will send radiation into your body. Cosmetics is put on your body, and then anything you put on your skin will be absorbed into your skin. So anything that might end up in your body or on your body is the jurisdiction of the FDA. And that sounds like a lot. That sounds like a big responsibility, and it is. In fact, the corporations that are creating new products every day, they quickly outpace the ability of the FDA to make sure everything is safe. So the FDA is actually always overwhelmed by this responsibility. They have a finite budget, they have a finite number of staff, they have finite time. They cannot guarantee that everything that's sold in stores, or now on the internet, is safe for consumption. That is just impossible. They do their best with what they can, but things slip through. It's like giving a guy a broom and putting them on the beach and asking them to like sweep away the tide of the incoming ocean. It's just not going to happen. So instead, the FDA can sometimes act like a lifeguard in that they wait until, they get reports of a foodborne outbreak, a adverse reaction, some report is coming in from the hospitals in an area saying we're getting a rise in number of cases of these complaints connected to this product, this consumer product. And then they respond to that. And then they will issue like a warning, a consumer warning. They will tell that manufacturer, the seller, to issue a product recall. They will start an investigation, and if it turns out that the seller or the manufacturer cut corners, broke the law, and that's why the product is harmful, then they will initiate penalties, and that's how this works. Okay. So one way to help them manage this massive, impossible volume of products to worry about is say that, well, if you invented this new product, this food product, and you want to sell it at the open market. Or how about here, in the cafeteria here, is it open yet? I heard they shut down for construction, like the cafeteria here. Anybody ate there recently? This cafeteria here, they say, I had this great idea. What if we took this popular cereal and mixed it in with yogurt, and it sold that? We already do it with granola, and now what if we buy these other popular cereals and start adding them into yogurt and cups, and then start selling that? Wouldn't that be a hit with the kids or the students? So they don't have to apply for an approval from the FDA, because each of those cereal products was already cleared by the FDA. The yogurt is already cleared by the FDA. So you combine the two together, and there's no cooking involved, there's no kind of biochemical reaction involved, and so they don't have to get approval from the FDA for this new product, because each of the items is generally regarded as safe. And so the new product is considered generally regarded as safe, and that's grass. Okay, so what could be a way that food is, these are for situations where the food is, because of a defect in the manufacturing process, what was that fast food company who had to have like a very popular, major, gigantic fast food restaurant chain that had to have a product recall a while ago. Now it's been like a few weeks ago, the news. Yeah, well, what's right? What was bad about their the E. coli outbreak at this popular? I'm not going to say the name. The popular fast food franchise. Did they find out what caused it or the origin of it?
Something about beef or beef going bad. Probably what you call it, the Big Mac or something.
It was one of their best-selling sandwiches, but the last I heard, it was it was the onions they put on it, and the investigators were traced back to not the company's methods, but they bought onions from a third-party supplier, and that third-party supplier uh, did something naughty, did something not good, and they not on purpose, but they tried to like save money, maximize profits by not following their own procedures. They were cutting corners, so they sold bad onions, and then it got a lot of people sick. And they like killed a couple of people, I think. Did it kill anybody? It's so old now, I forgot. So that's an example of um, they a company or one of its suppliers not following the law, not following the rules. But there are ways to follow the rules but still not be perfectly healthy. And that is now above and beyond the reach of the FDA. The Food and Drug Administration can only come after you if you clearly broke the law, violated your own procedures and policies that you got cleared by the FDA for. So a mistake was made or a crime was perpetrated, and then the FDA can come after you. As long as no laws are broken and policies and procedures are kept in place, then the FDA is out of their jurisdiction. Why am I saying all this? Because humans are really, really creative. And one of our best ways to express that creativity is how to game the system to maximize our benefits, minimize our liabilities, and walk away with as much profit as possible. For example, here are food companies that maximize their profits without getting in trouble with anybody. All of this is legal. But the result may be something, maybe a food that you will think twice. Maybe you have like not sure you want to eat this kind of food not after you learn about this. So how do you maximize a profit as a company? Not just a food company, but any company. How do you maximize profit as a company? Well, you raise the price as high as the market will bear, and you cut costs as low as possible before the customers start noticing a difference. Well, here's the problem with food. It's really hard to jack up the prices much higher than your competitor, because there are people like me who go to the grocery store and whatever food item I want to buy, I compare. I go to the aisle, I pick up the food item I want, and then I pick up the competitor and I start looking at the numbers. I start comparing numbers like net weight and price and ingredients, of course, and then I try to get what is like the healthiest but also the cheapest. So if one of those competitors suddenly doubles their price, I'm just not going to buy it. And so there's a ceiling of how much they can increase price. Now you may say, "Are you crazy? Have you seen the price of such and such a thing lately? It's gone crazy." Like yes, but they've all raised the price together. That's inflation. But no individual company will raise their price too high versus their competitor, because then they will lose market share. So there's a limit to how much revenue they can get. Instead, the profit is from reducing cost. And for an animal farm, as an example, also plant farms also have do this. The ways to reduce cost is space, time, and feed. And we'll talk about each one of these here. So space. Space means like real estate, the size of a warehouse, the size of your factory. The larger it is, the more property tax you have to pay, the more you spend on maintenance, building maintenance, etc. It's all very expensive. And so the smaller the building you have, then the cheaper things will be per unit product. But actually they do the opposite. So what if you bought the building, you own the building. You can't like make it smaller based upon market trends, right? You bought the building, you own it, use it the best way you can. So another way to maximize space is the other way to minimize space per product is to jam as much of the animals as you can into that space, the same space. Instead of having, 1,000 animals in this building, what if you can jam 2,000 animals? There, you just reduce the cost of that space by half per unit. See how this works? But here's the thing now, especially with animals. The more animals you jam into a tight space, the more likely it is that if one of them gets sick, they'll all get sick. Talk about social distancing. If one of them gets a respiratory disease or one of your chickens get the bird flu, then it will quickly spread because they don't to the rest because they don't have room to like walk away, to get far away. They're jammed together, shoulder to shoulder, nose to butt. There's just nowhere to room. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and search for it. Search for images of factory farms, and you will see animals jammed together. Now, to be fair, many of those images are published by organizations that hate factory farms. Like they want to put factory farms in a bad light. They want to launch a PR, public relations attack against these factory farms. So these pictures are especially gruesome. But even pictures published by these factory farms the animals there don't seem very happy. I don't know what a happy animal is supposed to look like. I'm not a veterinarian, but that doesn't seem like a happy way to live for an animal. What's this phrase, factory farming? Because when you think of farms, you think of like red barns and rolling green hills and happy animals, with the zoomies, living life to the fullest. And then when you think of a factory farm, you think of these dark gray buildings, belching smoke and pollution. And so how do you reconcile the two? Well, take the dark buildings, cavernous buildings, spewing forth pollution, and then put animals in it, and that's your factory farm. Okay, so in order to reduce the spread of infection across herds, what can they do while still saving money? And the idea is to put antibiotics in their food. Well, why don't they just wait until an animal gets sick, take it to the vet, cure it, and then put it back in the herd? That's too inefficient. They are trying to shave pennies per pound on costs. So to hire people to monitor the herds, to look for sick animals, and then stop the production line, assembly lines, factory, to stop the production line, to isolate that animal, and then pay a veterinarian to cure that animal, way too much money. It's going to destroy the cost savings that they were trying to go after. So it's more cost effective to not let the animals get sick in the first place. They do that by putting antibiotics in the food, whether they are sick or not. But remember, in the infectious disease lecture from this semester, I talked about how misuse of antibiotics, like not using them appropriately, accelerates the growth of superbugs that are resistant to the antibiotic. And so sure enough, factory farms around the world is a major source of antibiotic resistant superbugs and antiviral resistant superbugs too. The general public, however, when they see stories of antibiotics in their food, like their chickens and the chicken and the beef and the pork, they freak out for another reason. They're afraid that the antibiotic will get into their body. That's not really a problem, but as much of a problem as the generation of worldwide superbugs. But it does make the customer queasy and make them cringe a bit and make them not want to buy that product, and they start looking for like a competitor package. And so in response to that, as the awareness of antibiotics in food has grown among at least the richer members of the consumer community, some of these animal factory farms have like a separate line of product where across the package they proudly say, we don't use antibiotics in these chickens. They do use antibiotics in another group of chickens which they sell at a cheaper rate, but for these they don't use it. And then they'll talk about how we're committed to safety in our food. Safety is our number one priority, etc. And oh, by the way, these are 50 cents more per pound. So the people who do care are willing to pay that extra price when they see that label on the package, and they go buy that. For the rest of us who don't care, we go to the cheaper brand or the cheaper version. And because we don't care, we're just looking at the sticker, the price tag, and now everybody's happy, right? But anyway, that's one way to reduce price. Another way is time. For a factory farm, that's a problem, in that all year they've been investing and investing and investing in these animals. Sometimes they have to wait several years from when the animal is born to when they finally can send it to slaughter in the market to the butcher. So that whole time they're not getting any money out of that animal. They're just investing and investing and investing. And then finally the animal is large enough to send to the market, and now they can sell it and they get the revenue. Is there any way they can get their money sooner? Sure. How about we make these animals grow up faster? So they are chronologically a child, but their body is an adult. How do you make that happen? With hormones, with growth hormones, and of course with anabolic steroids. Remember, bodybuilders use anabolic steroids to beef up at the gym. So what if we give these animals anabolic steroids? So we have these children, these young animals looking like bodybuilders and as big as an adult, but they're mentally children. But who cares? They're going to be killed anyway and in the butcher. So we shorten the time until we get the revenue, and that saves time. There's less investment into the animal, there's less risk, and sure enough, that's less cost. Again, more consumers were finding out and saying, no, I don't want no hormones in my food. I don't want to be eating animal hormones, and I don't want to be eating anabolic steroids. So what's it worth to you? Are you willing to pay more to have hormone-free food? And some people say, yes, I can afford it. And so sure enough, there are hormone-free foods that are more expensive. For those who don't care, then you can go for the cheaper version, because those animals were grown cheaply. So we had space, time. One more slide about it. So just because now after you hear this, you say, oh my God, no, I don't want hormones in my food either. And I'm making a little money. I can afford to buy food without hormones. So yeah, and you're going to look for that the next time you're at the supermarket. Well, watch out, because sometimes just because it says no hormone doesn't mean there are no hormones. For example, I've seen stickers saying there's no RBGH, bovine growth hormone, in this beef. And they're very proud to say it. But what they're not saying is that they're using other hormones. So they're not using RBGH, but what else are they using? Well, they won't tell you. So you want to, and then it's like the change of one letter can protect them legally to allow them to legally say it, but it's like not what you were hoping for. So you want to see things like phrases like no hormones, or we don't use any hormones there. Now legally they're stuck. Now they cannot have any hormones. If they say we don't use this hormone, okay, well, good for you. You don't use this hormone. Do you use another hormone? Then you want. So the moral of this sub story is that, you know, read carefully, read the label carefully. Don't fall for traps. Okay. So we did space and time, and now feed. When you think of a cow, what were they supposed to eat? Grass. When you think of a chicken, what are they supposed to eat? Worms, seeds, of course. You know, they bugs. They peck on the ground for things like that. Okay. Animals raised in the U.S. all eat corn. Why? Why corn? Because corn can be kind of pricey at the grocery store, right? You buy a kernel of corn or you buy canned corn. They're not cheap. Meanwhile, grass? You mean like the grass I was mowing when I was a teenager? When I was a child, I had to mow my home, the lawn when and then what do? We bagged it up and threw it away. Are you saying that's more expensive than corn? Yes, because corn is subsidized by the U.S. government. Very long. It's a long story, but the cut to the chase. For generations, the government has been supporting the U.S. farmer to protect them from unpredictable market fluctuations. So to the point where the government will guarantee purchase of farm plant products no matter what the market says. That way, it's not as risky as it used to be a farmer of corn or any of these other products. You invested all year growing these things, and then suddenly there's a natural disaster or market shift, and now suddenly the price of your product doesn't cover your investment. You could go bankrupt. You could, as a farmer. So to protect you, the government says, don't worry, if the market price isn't as good as you need it to be, we'll buy the rest at a rate that will support you. And that sounds like a great thing. And of course, all these laws start with good intentions. But here's the thing. You are a corn farmer, and you heard about this news, this law, and now you have the incentive now to grow as much corn as possible, no matter what the market will predict, no matter the demand predicted by the market. If you want to grow 1,000 bushels, even though the market only wants you to make 100, it doesn't matter because the government will buy the rest. So, and at a profit for you. So these farmers can grow as many of these as they want, as much as they want, and maximize their profits because the government will cover it. It's government subsidies. Which means that, for example, we have way too much corn. They pack it up in, they sell the corn cobs, they sell canned corn and cream corn to the grocery stores of the world. We still have too much left over. So what do we do with the rest? Well, they need somebody who will buy. They need to get rid of it because it's going to spoil away in the storage rooms. So they went to the animal farms and said, you're feeding your animals grass, you're feeding them insects and seeds, why don't you feed them our corn? And then the the animal farm said, no, corn's too expensive. You know, grass is literally cheap. We can just mow the lawn outside and feed them our grass here. And then the corn sellers say, we'll beat that. Whatever you're paying for grass, you know, transport fees, collecting fees, we will beat that. We will sell you for even cheaper, and they'll keep doing it until, like, all right, we'll buy your corn. We'll feed our animals corn. So, biologically, is that worse? Is it worse for a cow to eat corn instead of grass? Of course, the nutritional count is different, grass versus corn. So there is a difference, and there is apparently a flavor difference, although flavor is highly subjective, highly subject to the placebo effect. If you pay more for something, you naturally think it tastes better because you paid more. That's how the mind works. But anyway, so there is a nutritional and flavor difference. However, in terms of like calories, growing big to be so the body can be sold on market, there's actually very little difference. So little difference that I really don't care. I don't care. As a consumer, I don't care. I just buy the cheapest beef on the shelf. I buy the cheapest chicken on the shelf. I don't care. Because any nutritional loss from a corn-raised cow is made up with my other nutritional sources. I just want the protein. That's really what I'm after. So we feed corn. Now, again, some consumers say, I don't want corn-raised cows. I want grass-raised cows. In fact, I want pasture-raised cows. Okay, well, you know, grass, as cheap as it sounds, is more expensive than American corn, so you're going to have to pay more. Can you? And some say, yes, I can, and I demand higher quality beef. Okay, you insist it tastes better. Okay, go ahead, go buy grass-fed cows. Buy milk from cows that are grass-fed or pasture-raised. But people who don't care, they just want the regular milk. How much is half gallon of regular milk? If you want grass-fed, pasture-raised cow milk, then it's twice as much. And then if you want organic, it adds like an extra couple dollars. Does it matter that much to you? If it does, all right, you pay twice as much for milk. But if you say, I can't afford to pay twice as much for milk or for beef, then you buy the corn-raised cows. So our American animals are raised on corn. But we still have way too much corn left over, even after all that. So what happens is they figured out how to turn corn into fructose. Fructose is a kind of sugar. Your table sugar is something else, sucrose. But fructose, which originally came from fruit, the word fruit, scam likely, so never mind them. So originally came from the word for fruit. And yes, this is a sugar found in fruit. So fruit's healthy, so fructose should be okay. That's true. Fructose is just a sugar. It's just another sugar. Don't panic. It's not a Franken-chemical made in a secret government lab. It's just ordinary sugar. Don't panic. But with all of this cheap corn turned into fructose, it is so cheap, this kind of sugar, that it dominates all sweeteners, all sweetness in American recipes. If you buy anything that's packaged that's sweet and uses sugar, it probably has fructose made from corn, including your soda. Anybody have a soda bottle, like a non-diet soda bottle here? Oh, usually there's somebody. Well, all right. So the here in this picture is sugar cubes stacked up for the different containers. Good luck finding just a can of soda these days. I mean, in the vending machine here, the smallest bottle you can find is a quarter liter. 250-liter bottle of soda. Anyway, I would have asked somebody to read the label in the back and tell me how much sugar is in that bottle. And of course you want to watch out, because the nutrition label in the back of the package is per serving. You have to look at the top of the label to find out how many servings per container, and then multiply the two. In other classes, we've had students say that their bottle that they were going to spend 1 hour drinking is 100 grams of sugar. And if you go to find the word sugar in the nutrition list, you won't find it. Instead, you'll either see fructose or its actual chemical name, high fructose corn syrup. And high fructose corn syrup sounds chemically, and that's been scaring away some customers. So they changed the name to things like maize syrup, because maize is the Central Native American word for corn. But maize sounds like, indigenous people, back to nature, all natural, ancient as ancient time. So that sounds healthy. That sounds like natural. But it's just high fructose corn syrup. It's maize syrup. Or fructose. And they're not wrong. You can't sue them for lying. Fructose is the same sugar found in fruit, so they're allowed to say it. But it all comes back to another name for high fructose corn syrup. All right, did that finally use up all the sugar made by this country? No, we still have too much corn left over, because corn producers have no brakes, nothing to slow them down. They profit for every extra kernel of corn. So they have an incentive, financial incentive, to grow as much as possible. So we have too much corn. We donate corn all over the world as part of our charity efforts. We still have too much corn left over. So what do we do finally with the remainder? We turn it into gasoline. Sugar is corn syrup is an energy source, and that's converted into ethanol. How many of you drive like a car? It's not everybody, because this is New York City, but if next time you're at the pump, you look for a sticker that says contains 10% ethanol. Where did that ethanol come from? From somebody's vodka bottle? No, it came from corn. Sugar is so cheap and the body responds to sugar so well that it's one of the main drivers of obesity in this country. There's a phrase, sugar is the new tobacco. And what this means is, long ago, when smoking was generally accepted in the culture, the science was coming up saying, actually, you shouldn't smoke because it causes cancer. And the tobacco companies, seeing that their profits, not just their profits, but their reason for existing was being attacked, needed to defend themselves. So they started doing everything they can to protect smoking as a consumer good. So they had to fight the science. And they did that by publishing their own science research, paying their own researchers to come up with studies that showed, no, smoking does not cause tobacco. Smoking is good for you. Smoking has these benefits, etc. They don't have to do that, by the way. They don't have to prove that smoking is good. They just have to produce results that confuse the issue. There are science research saying smoking is bad. They just have to show research that causes confusion. Like, your research that smoking is bad is flawed because of this and this and this and this reason. And so you have the researcher who showed that smoking is bad comes up on national TV, and then of course the news has to like give equal time for a debate. So the representative from the tobacco company comes up, and they don't even bother to say that smoking is good. They spend all of their time poking holes in finding any mistake, like minor errors in the other researchers' talk, to the point where whoever watched that show, whoever watched that debate, walk away thinking, I don't know what to believe. There, the tobacco companies succeeded. All the tobacco companies have to do with the science is to make the general consumer say, I don't know what to believe. It's all so confusing. There, they won. On the legal side, as advocacy groups try to pass laws to limit smoking, the tobacco companies send lobbyists to Congress. Anytime a law that limits smoking starts working its way through Congress, the lobbyists squelch it. They crush it. They do everything they can to prevent that bill from making its way into law. Well, guess what the sugar companies are doing nowadays? The same thing. They're publishing results, not to prove that sugar is good, but to show that all the research saying sugar is bad is flawed. It's complicated, and they cause the general public to get confused and disorganized. And of course, they pass laws, or they prevent laws limiting sugar intake from making its way through Congress. So that's why the phrase is sugar is the new tobacco. Oops. Why is sugar such a problem anyway? Because our bodies love sugar. You know why? Which goes to this concept, this thing. Every time you read a news article like saying you should eat more of this, you should eat less of this, it seems like every day there's a news article like that. And then some people will say, oh my God, this is so frustrating. Why is everything I like bad for me? Oh, it's quite simple actually. If you like first of all, everything is available to buy nowadays, at least with these kinds of things at this level. So not the most expensive food in the world, obviously not. But for most food in the world, if you want it, you can go buy it. There's a version on sale at the gas station down the street. If you want it, you can go buy it, and most of you, not all of you, but most of you can afford to eat as much of whatever it is you want. So with that purchasing power, our consumer society, we just spend our money on things we like to buy. So the more we like something, the more we eat it, until we eat too much. And then the doctors say, you should eat less of that. Meanwhile, the things we don't like to eat, we'd rather not eat, like vegetables, high fiber foods, whole wheat instead of white wheat. So we don't eat as much, because we walk into a gas station or the supermarket with a $20 bill, we're going to buy the foods that are high in sugar, salt, and fat, and less food that is high in lots of vegetables and fiber, like that. So we don't eat enough of some foods, and our doctors say you should eat more of this, and you're like, bleh, it doesn't taste as good as a Twinkie. You should eat more salad. Bleh, it doesn't taste as good as a hamburger. You'd rather eat another hamburger. So we eat too many hamburgers, we eat too many ice cream, we eat too much sugar, salt, and fat. And then reports come out saying sugar, salt, and fat is bad for you, and then you go, oh my God, why is everything I like bad for me? Well, because you eat too much. So the answer is, to eat a well-balanced food, you need some self-discipline to have a balanced diet. Organic is just a label that means no laboratory-produced chemical was used. But that's it. It's just no laboratory-produced chemical was used. Chemicals are used. I mean, oxygen is a chemical. Water is a chemical. So chemicals are all around us, but chemicals that can only be made in a lab through chemistry process is used. And that sounds very natural, so therefore it must be healthy, and you slap the organic label on it, and people want to buy because it's more healthy. And one of the main arguments that people use for organic is that, well, at least like my organic fruits don't have pesticides, which is wrong. They use pesticides, they just don't use synthetic pesticides. They use organic pesticides, which can still kill bugs and can still harm the body if you ingest too much of it. It's just naturally found pesticides. And that's one problem with organic. The other problem is because people with more money intentionally search out the organic label, then companies start putting the organic label on as much as they can, as long as it's not like breaking a law. They're not like actually out and out committing fraud. But some companies are caught committing fraud that way. So they will slap the organic label on their product until finally somebody tests it and finds out it's not organic, and then they get a slap on the wrist and say, naughty, don't do that again, and they pay a fine, but the fine is nowhere near as much as the profits they just made selling it that way. So that's another problem with organic. A problem with the all-natural movement is that all-natural doesn't mean it's guaranteed to be healthy. Cyanide is all natural. Arsenic is all natural, 100% natural, but that's what you use for to assassinate people. So all natural doesn't mean it's all healthy. So if you do care, then you pay more. For a person like myself who can't afford to pay that much for food, I ignore the organic label. I just go for price. Genetically modified organisms is another one that triggers consumers. So you see the non-GMO label. You'll never see a product that says it is GMO because the US laws don't require it. So companies can use genetically modified organisms, usually plants, and they are not required to say it. The only way to avoid it is to look for products that say non-GMO, because they will loudly advertise, we're not GMO, we guarantee it, so buy us instead. So the purpose of genetically modified organisms is to modify a plant or an animal so that it maximizes profit, reduces cost, and then gets to the market faster and like that. The most common version is a plant that is mixed with the genetics of like something else that is extra resistant to like a pest, a bug. So this bug damages crops, reduces crop yield, reduces tonnage to market, and then by mixing the genes with the next year of plants, those insects no longer like that plant and no longer eat it. So, which means that they don't have to use as many pesticides on that GMO plant. So ironically, by buying non-GMO wheat, you are increasing the chance that there was pesticides used on that wheat. GMO wheat has less pesticides used because they don't have to. The plant itself resists the pests. That was the origin. So, playing with genetics, is that like playing God? Is that like playing with the blueprint of life? Are they going to, if you eat it, will you get like superpowers or get cancer or something like that? What are the side effects of it? So the research so far, and here is the this is a USA Today. It's a newspaper company. It's a for-profit newspaper company, but their report is that the short-term and medium-term effects of eating GMO food has not shown any problem. It's not risky to the human consumer to eat GMO products in the short term and the medium term. What about long-term effects? Well, we don't know because GMO hasn't been around long enough to do long-term studies. So how long will it take? I don't know, 20 years, another 20 years, finally it'll be around long enough to do long-term effects studies. But I'll be retired by then, so I don't know who's going to be teaching this course. Lots of people teach this course, so we'll see. Another argument in favor of GMO is that some say we've been doing this since humans domesticated the first life form. The first time we modified the proto-wheat plant and turned it into the wheat we know today, that is genetic modification. And then the anti-GMO camp says, no, that's not the same thing. You're not playing with genes in a lab. You're like mixing mommy and daddy plants together and making offspring the natural way. So that's that. So again, I don't care if the food I buy has the GMO label or not. I'm just going for the cheaper one. Globalization is another risk because, like I alluded to, there are countries around the world that have stronger or weaker safety laws than the U.S. And when we buy products from there and ship it into the country, then we roll the dice. But U.S. safety laws and food safety laws are not the strictest in the world. Europe and Japan have the strictest safety laws in the world, to the point where many U.S. products are banned in Europe. I think like U.S. beef is restricted in Europe because of the things we put in the cows. But that's like the exception. Otherwise, food imports, other countries other than Japan and Europe, their safety laws are weaker than the U.S. And so when we import food from there is the risk. And every once in a while, once every other year, there's a news story about a foodborne outbreak caused by imported food. You walk along the Southern State Parkway in Brooklyn, and you see these giant container ships going in and out of New York Harbor. That's imports and exports. Who makes sure that it's all safe for American consumption? The FDA does, but again, the FDA is overwhelmed. So all they can do is do spot checks. They cannot inspect every package. That's impossible. Instead, they pick a random container and look inside. They take a random package and check it. As long as it's good, then that's about all they can do, other than wait for disease outbreak reports from the local hospitals, and then they investigate. There's one more health concern about globalized food, which is the food miles. Some production processes around the world are so cheap that it's actually competitive to ship them halfway around the world and sell it here than to make it here. It's like some countries, their furniture making operation is so cheap that it's cheaper to take American wood, ship it all the way over there. They make the furniture, ship it all the way back, and it's still cheaper than the furniture that's made here. But that's just the cost of production and transport. No mention, no factoring in about the effect it has on global warming. The burning of fossil fuels, the fuels to push the ships to run the ships, the transport costs of burning fossil fuels to ship these things all over the world. So for those of you who do care about what your purchases do to climate change, and you want to minimize the effect that your purchases have on climate change, you can compare food miles. This website will tell you, you punch in the product and the country it came from, and it'll tell you how many miles it had to transport in order to be put in your hand. And you know that in order to be transported those miles, it had to be put on a ship, it had to be put on a truck, and that's one more effect of globalization. So the FDA hears about food outbreaks, whether it's domestic products or import products, and then they investigate and they work together with the Center for Disease Control to figure out where these problems came from. So if you are concerned about your own health and the impact you have on the world, well, the answer is always education. It's always education. Think critically, meaning don't believe everything you hear on the internet. Don't even believe what you hear from me, because it's always best to look things up yourself. And education means not only take a class like this, but take follow-on classes, next level classes, senior level classes. If you are really into it, like graduate level classes, the more you learn, the better you will be prepared. Not only to know what the better thing to do is, but also to put armor on yourself against the BS and the gaslighting that other people and corporations may try to fool you with, such as labels. So the problem with labels is that they are heavily influenced by corporations. The food labels and the nutrition labels in the back of packages, of course those numbers are influenced by corporations, but it's the best we have. And so if it's impossible to be perfect, then it's better than nothing. Good is better than perfect, because good is possible and perfect is impossible. So never try to be perfect. Just try to do what you can to be better. Or the phrase actually is, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So somebody asked about organic, and that made me think of free range. I guess organic is not on the slide here. Free range is a label that was popular with chickens. So imagine, the reason why free range became popular is because when pictures of factory farm chickens came out, where the chickens were jammed together, in a class I took, there was this case study of chickens that were so jammed together that they would peck each other to death. You guys have heard of the pecking order? Chickens have a social hierarchy. There's the alpha, there's the top chicken, and then the next level chicken, and the next level chicken, all the way to like the bottom chicken. It's a pecking order, it's a hierarchy. And they sort it out by like who's bigger, who's stronger, and that's usually how this works. But then the higher chicken will dominate their area, and then the lesser chicken has to like give it space. The lesser chicken has to retreat because they realize they are the lesser chicken. Well, what happens if they can't, because they're all stuck together in a cage? Well, then the higher chicken will keep pecking at the lower chicken until it retreats, but the lower chicken can't. So chickens kept getting pecked to death in these cages. And there was this one case study where they tried putting contact lenses on the chickens to effectively make these chickens have cataracts, so they cannot see clearly, which means they cannot tell which chicken is which chicken. They're not sure if the chicken right next to them is the higher ranked chicken or the lower ranked chicken, so they don't peck each other. I just still remember that case study because it's just so bizarre. Anyway, so the answer seems like, well, why don't you give them more space? And of course, the problem is we're trying to save money by jamming, by becoming efficient with space. So we have to jam it together. But then there are other chicken farms that say, no, we'll do it here. We'll lose some money. We'll have higher costs because we allow our chickens to run around these rolling grassy fields. But we'll advertise that these are free-range chickens. So if you have a conscience, you care about humane treatment of chickens, ethical treatment of chickens, and you will buy our chickens and we'll charge twice as much. Something like that. So that got very popular. The richest people started asking for free-range chickens because they have the money to care and they don't mind paying twice as much per chicken. But that started cutting into the profits of the other chicken farms until finally the other chicken farms started putting free range on all of their labels too. And then there were lawsuits saying, you can't do that. Your chickens are not free range. So you're not allowed to say your chickens are free range. And that lawsuit worked its way all the way up to Congress. And then the major mega chicken corporations sent their lobbyists to Congress as part of that debate. And what finally came out of Congress was a law that's saying, okay, let's set down the definition of free range once and for all, so everybody have a standard to work on. And what finally came out of Congress is you are allowed to call your chicken free range if the window of your warehouse is open for 5 minutes a day. That's what free range means. So if you see free range label on your package, that's what it took. And so I'm saying that it turned into a joke. There. That's what lobbyists can do in Congress to what started as an attempt to treat animals ethically. And that's what will happen. That's what mega corporations are always trying to do to any future label, any future product idea that threatens their profits. They will send advertisers, they will send lobbyists, they will send their research scientists to muddy the waters, to undermine the quality or the reputation of the label so that it's no longer a threat to their profits. How are you supposed to know which is which? Do your own research. Education, thinking critically.